As the civil war enveloped eastern Nigeria in the late 60s, a young couple fled to make a new life for themselves, leaving behind the sanctity of family, close friends, and an extremely comfortable lifestyle in a tropical, almost paradise-like setting that many of us could only really dream of. The young headmaster and school teacher arrived in the grey, cold, damp climes of Ealing, West London. They missed their motherland immensely and set in their minds that when things had settled, they would return. And in the meantime, they continued to hold dear their Nigerian culture, a culture which manifested itself in customs and traditions, which they admired through art, listened through the beats of high life music, swayed through the vibrancy of dance, tasted in aromatic cuisines, and spoke through expressive language. And preservation of their culture became even more important to them as they had their children. Each and every one knew that in this new land, only the sky is the limit, and never to doubt their self-worth. Their second child was a daughter they called Ugo. Ugo means eagle, the national bird revered and respected by Nigerians for its beauty, its power, its courage. And they wanted for her to always carry in her heart that the sky is her limit. I am Ugo, the eagle that was born to soar. Now, as that eagle started to take flight, I became a successful management consultant. And in the early part of my career, I often worked away from home. Now, one evening, as I was relaxing in my hotel room, after a very long day and a particularly challenging meeting, my confidence was cruelly shattered as my old Nokia 3310 pinged an anonymous text message. Now, this message was worlds apart from the love and reassurance I was expecting from my dear husband. And instead, I read the words, "Fuck off, you black bitch." Whoa. What the hell did this? Where did this come from? My chest, my heart was thudding against my chest, the sound almost deafening. My hands clammy. I was panicked, I was scared, I was at a loss. Who from around the table had chosen to terrorize in this cowardly way? I want to share with you, in that moment, I felt myself shrink. I felt myself stepping away from my power. In that single incident, I felt as though my eagle wings had broken, and I felt myself fall to earth. Now, let's imagine for a moment thousands of other black people in the workplace across the UK experiencing that very same incident, who choose not to speak up, who become shadows of themselves, where one person's banter becomes another person's hurt, where one person is told, just grow a thick skin. I became one of those people, silenced by the shock, silenced by the ensuing self-doubt, and silenced by the indignity. At that time, I couldn't muster the courage to have the type of conversation that needed to happen in the workplace. A conversation about race, a colour-brave conversation. Yet, I was reminded of my need to be colour-brave just a few years later, when I was invited to talk as a number of senior women to share our career histories at Imperial College with a STEM audience. Now, during the talk, there was a young lady who asked a number of soul-searching, absolutely brilliant questions, which piqued my interest and really made me feel quite giddy. She exuded confidence, she exuded gravitas, and she exuded an intellectual curiosity that made me think, wow, what would it be like to work with her? So after the journey stories were done, I made a beeline to learn more about that inspiring young lady. However, the more we spoke, the more my heart sank. As she explained to me, her mother had warned her that the corporate world was not for the likes of her. And by that, she meant black people. She didn't want to have to edit herself to work in that environment. They don't get us, she said, and they'll never treat us right. How many more eagles? How many more ideas? How many more dreams were failing to take flight? It was in that moment that I knew I needed to be colour brave. So I have a vision to create a world which recognises, embraces, and decisively acts on the value of ethnic diversity in the workplace, where it is the norm rather than an on-fleek trend that we are visible, vocal, and taking our seat at the leadership table in an environment that makes it an easier thing to do. A place where people feel safe to bring their whole selves to work, where they thrive, are able to reach their potential, and achieve success in whichever field they choose. So, if we were to imagine that this is a party, diversity is the invitation. Inclusion is choosing to get up and dance. And equality is helping to select the playlist. Being colour brave is a concept first introduced by Melody Hobson. And it's about how we can have courageous conversations about race with real courage and honesty, so that we can make better decisions and secure better prospects for all members of our future generations. Let me share with you just 3 simple reasons why we should all care, and ways in which I and all of us can start colour brave conversations. Number 1, the war for talent. Now, as women, we continue to battle with cracking the glass ceiling, where we can see people on the other side of that ceiling that look like us, well, at least in terms of gender. But for Black, Asian, minority ethnics, a group known as BAME, B-A-M-E, for this talent pool, we're having to grapple with a powerful pneumatic drill to smash through the concrete ceiling, because you can't be what you can't see. Let's take the STEM lady and amplify her many times over. That's just a real example of how many future leaders we are collectively losing from our organisations. People who should be making a difference to all of our organisations in this relentless war for talent. Here, we can start the conversation by challenging our HR directors, our board of directors, the people that run the companies, ourselves, to ask the question, why is it that BAME people have lower levels of retention, lower levels of promotion than the majority in our organisations? And then recognising that there is a problem. Because if we can name it, we can own it, we can change it. Here we continue the conversation by moving past the colorblind smokescreen, because it's hugely unhelpful. It adds absolutely nothing. Zero. Nada. The smokescreen that says, do you know, Ugo, I really don't see colour. And I'm thinking, but every morning I wake up and look in the mirror. I love the black woman that gazes back at me. So it perplexes me when people pretend that it doesn't exist. It does. Number 2, putting the customer first. It is the absolute smart thing to do to ensure that all of our organisations reflect the society and customers we serve. We all know that diverse teams lead to diverse solutions and customer-centric solutions, customer-focused solutions. And here we should be starting the conversation by listening and asking questions to understand rather than to try and explain away or diminish or ignore somebody's truth, somebody's reality, somebody's experience, or just pretending that we actually know the answer when we don't. Now let's imagine for just 1 second if H&M had decided to listen, perhaps even put a BAME person on their advertising campaign. They would not have thought it was okay to label a young black boy as a monkey in their bid to sell children's clothes. Because funnily enough, those are the products that I, and millions like me, will not be buying. When we listen, we learn. And thirdly, show me the money. The data is telling us that getting race equality right in the UK is worth an estimated £24 billion per year. 24 billion. And when we scale that up and look at global companies, those firms that have diverse people in their leadership teams are outperforming their competitors by more than 30% in terms of profitability. The competitive advantage is stark. So here we should start the conversations by asking ourselves as leaders, is everyone in the room? Are all voices being heard? Who are we leaving behind? And then holding ourselves accountable. We need to start a conversation that challenges systemically and organisationally what we're going to do different, rather than expecting BAME people to change themselves in order to fit in. So, if we are going to be colour brave, we need to stop putting these conversations in the "oh, it's too difficult" pile. Somebody once described it to me as an itchy jumper itch when you wear a woolen jumper. And I said, that's okay. That's what moisturiser is for. Get over it. Let's move on. So the thing is this. If we are to be colour brave, we all need to start having conversations. Black, white, Asian, men, women, all of us. Otherwise, inclusion and equality will be dusty shelf policies rather than real transformative behaviours. So my ask of each of you today is to think of a time when you were made to feel as though your wings were broken, and ask yourselves, how will I change that for those who come after me? My ask of you today is not to be colorblind, but to be color brave, and to drive the conversations in the spaces in which you dominate. The time to talk was yesterday. The time to act disruptively is now. The time has come for each of us to find our inner eagle and soar.